Night shift delivery driving is an exercise in pure repetition. You pick up the food, you drive through half-empty streets, and you drop it off to a stranger you will never see again. It is a grind born of financial necessity. Over time, this routine breeds a specific kind of conditioning. Workers in the gig economy are trained to trust the app implicitly. The map interface dictates where to go, when to turn, and how to survive the night. You stop questioning the destination and simply follow the blue line. This exact conditioning was in play on a seemingly forgettable night for one particular driver. It was 11:45 p.m. The driver was exhausted, half asleep, and fully prepared to turn off the engine and head home. In this digital ecosystem, the need for a paycheck routinely overrides human intuition. When your livelihood depends on accepting the next prompt, your guard drops, leaving you vulnerable to requests that might otherwise trigger immediate alarm. Just as the driver was logging off, a new order appeared. The payout was wildly disproportionate, an unusually high sum for what appeared to be a very short trip. But the details attached to that money were missing key information. There was no street name and no house number. The standard markers of a registered address were replaced entirely by raw numeric coordinates. The driver sat in the glow of their phone, staring at the screen. A gut-level instinct signaled that this was a system glitch, but the high payout was right there, and the pull of the money eventually silenced the doubt. By hitting accept, the driver effectively stepped outside the established, mapped world of city streets, trading human navigation for a path defined strictly by raw, contextless data. For the first 20 minutes, the journey looked like any other shift. There were still traffic signals, city lights, and the ambient hum of passing cars. Slowly, the environment began to peel away. The buildings vanished. The streetlights grew farther apart, until the driver was navigating a narrow road flanked by dense forest, with the city lights disappearing in the mirror. Cut off from physical landmarks, the driver clung to that digital tether as the physical world turned unrecognizable. 10 minutes later, the destination appeared. It was a single house sitting in complete isolation, surrounded by nothing but trees and darkness, illuminated only by a weak, flickering porch light. The coordinates had successfully routed a vehicle out of the safety of the grid, depositing the driver into a space completely severed from civilization. Stepping out of the car, the driver was met with a heavy, suffocating silence. There were no crickets and no wind rustling the branches. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The driver forced themselves to walk up to the porch. Just as they reached out to knock, the front door slowly creaked open on its own, revealing only dense darkness inside. The driver called out a weak greeting. In response, a faint, emotionless whisper drifted out from deep inside the house. "Leave it and go." Placing the food inside the doorway, the driver finally looked into the room. There were no visible walls, no furniture, and no floor. It was an endless, textureless blackness that seemed to actively consume the faint light spilling in from the porch. The driver stepped back, and the door slammed shut. When it creaked open a second time, a cowering, unnaturally thin figure stood in the threshold. Its body was stretched in impossible ways, its face hidden in shadow, as it quietly studied the driver. Instinct finally took over. The driver sprinted back to the car, fumbled with the keys, and slammed their foot on the gas. Glancing in the rearview mirror, they saw the entity standing closer to the car than before, having moved without making a single sound. The driver had encountered an environment that actively defied physical logic, narrowly escaping an entity that belonged entirely to whatever was waiting inside that void. It was only after reaching the safety of a well-lit main road that the driver's breathing slowed. Seeking some sort of rational grounding, they pulled out their phone to check the delivery app, but the screen was empty. The high-paying order, the GPS coordinates, and the record of the trip had been wiped from the system. The app showed no trace that the transaction had ever occurred. Driven to verify their own memory, the driver returned the following day. They used their phone's GPS history to retrace the exact route, driving back out into the woods in broad daylight. They arrived at the exact coordinates, only to find an unbroken wall of trees. There was no house, no driveway, and no sign that a structure had ever stood in the clearing. An encounter with life-threatening consequences occurred entirely off the record, leaving zero forensic trace in either the physical landscape or the digital servers we use to map our world. These anomalies exploit the vulnerabilities of the modern worker. They utilize the unblinking authority of a digital wayfinding tool to lure people out of safe zones and into spaces that shouldn't exist. The driver is left with the memory of that unnaturally stretched figure and the knowledge that whatever opened that door was not human. The coordinates acted as a carefully constructed trap, designed to pull the driver off the map of reality and into a space they were never supposed to leave.